Welcome to Season 5 of the Long-Winded One podcast. Listen as we showcase original work from top Royalroad authors read by professional voice actors. Hear interviews from your favorite lit RPG and game lit authors. Lastly, listen as the Long-Winded One tries his hand at his first ever lit RPG novel, The Four Treasures.
Welcome everybody to another episode of The Long-Winded One. With me tonight, I have somebody named Jack Pembroke, who is another author from Royalroad. He's also another writer from Massachusetts. Now, I didn't plan it this way. It's just that we're very industrious here in Massachusetts. But welcome to the podcast, Jack.
Thanks for having me, Jared. Glad to be here.
The reason we're having you here, obviously, this whole series is about lit RPG and game lit, and you are a writer in that genre. You are a prominent author on Royalroad, and so we have a piece that we're going to be listening to. It is a piece of a short story, I believe, called Jank. Is that correct?
That's right. It actually won't be a piece. It will be a recording of the entire short story.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I know we talked about that, so I'm glad to hear that that's coming to fruition. So other than the fact that you're a writer and that you're from Massachusetts, is there anything you'd like to tell the listeners about yourself?
Oh, well, let's see. I've been running D&D games or anything like it, tabletop RPGs for, oh God, it's got to be coming up on 30 years now. I'll call it 25 just to make myself not feel so old. But about 25 years, I am what's known as a forever DM. I always have a story to tell and always have. Got a couple of kids, but I'm pretty sure it's the actual experience from the gaming that's been informing my writing that people will be mostly interested in. Most of my writing is heavily influenced by the RPG genres of TTRPG, different gaming systems, even just like the standards of D&D. I'm pretty old school when it comes to that stuff.
Well, let's go to the next question here. I think it's a nice segue to talk about the actual genre we're talking about. So how did you come to this world of lit RPG? Did you have like some sort of gateway writer that you followed? How did you come to the community?
Well, that's an interesting question in the sense of, and I had to think about this, what is a lit RPG? What is essentially game lit? And I came to think that it's our first experiences with this genre are probably, and maybe I'm dating myself a little here, is watching other people play games. It's a situation in which you have no control over the system, the choices, the actions, but you are still a part of a story that's being told, and you just kind of are along for the ride. So my first experience, to me, with lit RPG would probably be watching my uncle play Hex on the Nintendo 64 ages and ages and ages ago. And so I kind of think that's where, and from other people, it's going to be things like Let's Plays. It's going to be an older brother that you watched play a game. And I think that might be what sparks the interest in a lot of people, where, yes, we can play the game ourselves, but sometimes we like to watch someone else do it, where the pressure's off a little bit and you can kind of backseat game, so to speak, while you watch.
And what about writers? Like you mentioned being a part of stories. What about those choose your own adventure books? Did you ever get into those?
Oh, yes. I had a good collection of choose your own adventure books. I was very much dedicated to the don't save your page kind of thing. Open, read, the book ends, done. I'd go back, of course, but I never did the flip back kind of thing. As for books in the lit RPG genre, I think probably my first book where I really was like, I have a few in my long distant memory where it's like, I know I read a book about people in a video game or something like it, but they're kind of lost to time. I think my kind of re-entry into that genre as a concept was probably, and like many people, likely Ready Player One, which just sort of brought me back to like, oh, right. Books with video games in them. I remember those. What else is out there?
What about like in the genre itself, like moving forward in time a little bit? Do you have any favorite authors out there that you started reading before you started writing?
I got into, no surprises, Dungeon Crawler Carl sucked me in pretty good. I've been reading all the skills lately. There's one that's just not coming to mind right now. He Who Fights with Monsters. He Who Fights with Monsters. That's it, of course.
And so how did you decide to make the leap to Royalroad?
That kind of came from a friend who had told me at one point, like he was involved with Royalroad, And he's like, Jack, you've been telling stories in one way or another for as long as I've known you, for decades. Maybe it's time to just write one down and do a one player D&D session, so to speak. And I hemmed and hawed about it for a million years. Who wants to read that? What could I do Fab for? I'm not that great of a writer. I had no idea. But I gave it a shot. I remember I sat down to do it, just to bang out a short story the day after my wedding. And that ended up turning into a 3-book series. Not fully written yet, but it got bought as a 3-book series.
What we're going to hear in the next episode, the Jank short story, is that a part of that 3-book series?
No, Jank is the first short story that I wrote in the gamelit genre. That was kind of an aside, whereas when I was writing the primary book, I realized I've got this other little story that I need to tell. And so I'm just going to kind of get that out there while I can. And I loved it. It was such a fun thing to write that I ended up having a whole a small compendium of gamelit short stories that are available to read.
We've talked offline, and you have mentioned the importance of short stories to you. Is that something that you'd like to touch on now?
Absolutely. If you are an aspiring writer, or if you are a writer at all, I cannot recommend short stories enough. Writing short stories, that is. Like, writing short stories is the working out of the craft. It's exercise for your writing skills. A short story teaches you how to start, teaches you how to peak a story, teaches you how to wrap one up, teaches you how to write an ending. And it gives you practice in editing your own work, which is incredibly important, just to be able to say a lot with as little as you can. I highly recommend anyone that's interested in writing, whether you are writing now or not, bang out a short story or two, just to keep it fresh. If you need that break from what you're writing, if you're feeling a little blocked up and you're not quite sure where to go, write a short story. Just try one out. It goes for readers too. I consider short stories, besides writing practice, I consider them to be like reading palate cleansers. You see a lot of people that post on things in Messboard. They say, I don't know what to read next. I just finished this giant epic. If that's you, read a few short stories. They'll kind of whet your appetite. They're like appetizers for different genres, different concepts. It'll give you a better idea of what you'd like to read next. I recommend Jank, now on Royalroad. If you're writing, write some short stories. They will give you all the skills you'll need, and this is the good part, they'll key you into certain habits that you have, ones that aren't clear through longer form stories, ones that you won't notice over 100,000 words. But as you try to condense a story down into 10,000 or less, you're going to look at it and be like, I use this turn of phrase a lot. I always describe things this way. I always skimp on this kind of detail. And it will really help hone in your craft and really take a magnifying glass to the way you write.
Do you have any other advice about writing, particularly on Royalroad? And if so, what would that be?
Okay, I can give you some very serious keys to success here. So I'm not going to tell you how to write. I'm not going to tell you what to write. I'm not going to tell you how to edit or what to edit. That's all on you. But I'm going to go through a few things that I had to learn kind of step by step in the process that will give you a head start for getting some writing success. One of the first things that I need you to do, kind of set your expectations and set a definition for success. If you are just popping onto Royalroad and you are throwing out your first story, manage your expectations. You may not be the next I was reincarnated as a set of colored pencils and save the world. And that happens, everybody nat 20s now and then. And yes, that could be you, but let's assume not. It'll be a happy accident if it is. So get an understanding of what you want to accomplish through this. Do you want to have views? Do you want followers? Do you just want to get it out there and get feedback? Are you going to be happy with 50 followers that you can talk to? Just have an idea. Next, what I need you to have is a backlog. So me personally, I like to write the whole thing before I start putting it out. I know that's not what everybody does. I know some people kind of go a little faster, a little while they do things. I don't have the time for that. You should at least be 10 releases ahead of where you are. Just because things happen, you want to be able to keep your readers engaged with releases. So make sure you're where you're a little ahead of the game. I recommend, of course, writing the whole book, but not everybody can do that. That's okay. The next thing I want you to do is decide your release schedule. So that's how often you're going to release chapters on Royalroad. The latest updates on Royalroad is where you're going to pick up a lot of stray readers, people who just happen to glance you on the recently updated, and they, okay, I'll click and I'll have a look. So if you dump your entire book out at once, you're going to appear on that list once, disappear within a few minutes, and that'll be the end of it. I can recommend, if you're really going for it, if you're really going for broke, a daily release schedule can be good. That will at least get you on there every day. It'll keep your readers engaged and watching, and it'll just give you an idea of what you're going to need to do. I started out with a weekly release schedule, and that was okay. But then towards the end, or I guess more towards the middle, I switched to a daily release schedule, and my readership skyrocketed. There's a lot of people who are you got to keep their attention, and a once a week update is not going to keep their attention. So now we're going to talk about the important one, the part that people really want to know about. How do you get people reading your story? So there's a few of the most important things. I'm going to go with probably the three or four most important things. First of all, there's review swaps. Now I know a lot of people love their review swaps. A lot of people ask for them, we'll do an honest review swap with each other. And that's fine. It's totally okay to do a review swap. It should be noted, though, that in terms of the Royalroad algorithm for things like rising stars and weight of reviews, review swaps are detected and they are undervalued. So if you and another author friend review each other's work, Royalroad knows it and knows that it's not truly authentic. So it kind of bumps down the importance of those reviews. And it should also be noted that reviews, I don't consider them to be the most important thing for popularizing your story. I'd say review swaps are at their most useful because they kind of protect you from the errant 0.5 star. And we all know them. We all know the 0.5 stars. It is the bane of our existence as writers on Royalroad. You've got a bunch of stuff out. It's nice. It's great. Bam. Someone gives you a 0.5 star on the first chapter, and you know it's BS. You did not read my story. I have no idea why you're here. I have no idea why you did that, and it just stings. Getting a casual review swap with somebody can kind of protect you from the implications of that. Once you get big enough, if you get enough reviews, you'll be able to absorb a 0.5 star, or even a few of them. And, remember the fact that everyone gets these 0.5 stars. Everyone. They're just baked into the system at this point. But the review swaps can help protect you from a really early one that, knocks you down to just having a story that says it's a 0.5 star, which might dissuade some people and make you feel bad, which is even worse. So have your review swaps, use them as armor for against these 0.5 reviews, but don't depend on them. Don't really harp on them. You'll be okay. That's kind of an important one. The big three, though, the big three things that are going to get people looking at your story. I'm going to start off with my favorite, are shoutout swaps. Shoutout swaps are when you get in contact with another author and you agree to do a shoutout for each other, where you link each other's stories in your current chapter. Now, there's different ways. Some people put them in the post-chapter author's note. Some people put them in the story or the pre-chapter author note. It's kind of personal preference. Now, here's the thing. You can get, the people might say, what's your shoutout code? And that's like a URL style link that'll essentially kind of do a grab of your cover, your blurb, your title, and will quick and easy implant it into the post-chapter author's note. If you want to look into that a little bit and make sure you can get it, just do a Google search for Royalroad shoutout code. It'll be the first thing that appears. It's a forum post by a user named Drim from a long time ago, I think, at this point. It'll be a very easy method for doing it. I try to make my shoutouts a little different. So I see the way that people do shoutouts, and typically, yes, it's you kind of chuck a shout out, you chuck the link at the end of your story, and it sits there as is. But what I like to do is I would read a few chapters of my shout out buddy. I would think of some positive and interesting things to say about their story, things that make it unique, things that they do well, stylistic choices that I really enjoyed, or feelings that it gave me. And I put out some really intense shout out swaps. I'm going to have, if you go onto my profile in Royalroad, you'll see my The Necromancer's End. That's my story that's on there. By the time you're listening to this, it'll probably have been stubbed, but I will still include all of the shout outs from my later chapters in the one chapter that everyone can see. But you'll see that I do these much more involved shout out swaps because I really want to hype someone up who's doing me the favor of sharing my story. And having that really nice shout out swap kind of lets you punch a little above your weight class in terms of who's going to accept an invitation from you for a swap. Because they'll take a look and be like, hey, and I would say, hey, I want to do a shout out swap with you. Love to do it. I do some pretty good ones if you want to have a look. And they take a look and they're like, oh, he's not just going to link my profile. He's going to actually say something nice. He's going to encourage his readers to go to my story and tell them why they should be here and say nice things about my story, which every author wants to hear. And so that let me get a few fairly big names saying yes to my shout out swap offers. Names that were probably a little bit out of my league, to be honest. When I say like out of my league, I mean people in like the views in the millions. Some people that have been like live on the front page.
I noticed too. You have a note at the very beginning of your chapter, and then you have a note at the end of your chapter. Do you do that for each chapter?
I do. Ratings, reviews, and recommendations. Those are the things that I ask of readers. Rate my story, review my story, recommend my story to other people. They won't do it if you don't ask. I mean, they might, but it doesn't hurt to ask. You kind of it's the, what's it called in marketing? The call to action. Like, you enjoyed my story. I appreciate it. Click that 5-star if you please, type out a review. I'd appreciate it. That's part of reader engagement. Reader engagement is a good thing. People, if you are personable and you are talkative, it can be really helpful for people, helping people connect with the story and with the author. Now, one of the things that people have asked that I've had to help with is they say, well, who do I ask about these shout out swaps? There's so many stories on Royalroad. Who do I talk to? It's a great question. And I will tell you the answer. This is a good answer. Go to your fictions page, and this won't be as heavily populated right away, but it'll get there. And if you scroll down, there'll be a section called Others Also Liked. And there'll be several pages of stories that share things like share readers. So certain readers that you have that also read these, commonalities of keywords. And so these are going to be people whose stories are in some way similar to yours, or have people that like yours and like theirs. And they're much more amenable, especially if you open with that. Like, hey, my readers are your readers. Let's point them towards each other. We can share in each other's success. And as you become more successful, as you get more and more readers, the Others Also Like section will develop. It will get more and more people. New things will come in as the algorithm kind of compacts it back down. And the number of people in these other stories will increase as well. They'll have more readers, followers, ratings, reviews, all that stuff. You should be a little choosy, but as you get up there, take a closer look and try to, of course, aim for someone who's got a few more readers than you. But if you think something is a particularly good match, reach out. It's not going to hurt. You're sharing readers either way. And shoutouts are where I got a huge number of my readers. So you've got your shoutouts. You got your few review swaps. Good. Shoutouts help with the reviews because whoever likes the also liked is going to like what you like. Now, we get into the slightly ugly side of it with ads. Ads help a lot. If people don't know about your story, they can't read it. And there's a lot to be said about how to design an ad that will catch people's attention. I can't help you much there because it's kind of depends on the tone you're going for. The most I can recommend is don't do a meme ad. I know they appear and there's some popular stories that have had success with them, but I wouldn't. Don't chase the meme, If you're going to do a thirst trap ad, a thirst trap ad would be your ad is a promiscuous woman, make sure that that in some way reflects what your story is, because you're going to attract a lot of people into the thirst trap. And if that's not what it is, they're going to be kind of upset and you're going to get really beat down with those 0.5 stars. Try to make it catchy. Try to make it clean. Please try to make sure it's formatted correctly. I have seen a lot of ads that get weirdly stretched out, but my most successful ad was a white background with the Necromancer's End in black letters. For some reason that stood out and was quite successful.
This is really good. It's actually very scientific. You probably spent many hours researching this.
Honestly, you know what I did? And you can do research for stuff like this. I networked. Networking is a huge part of success with this kind of thing. I talked to people that were much more successful than me. They taught me a lot. They were very verbose about how things worked, what did work and what wouldn't work. And a lot of them became my Shoutout swap buddies. Cover is next. You do not need a cover to succeed. There have been a good number of stories that didn't have covers that did very well, but it helps. It sets the tone of your story. It attracts people. And it's kind of that weird thing where people will judge your book by its cover. You know, a good cover can make a person click just out of curiosity because it looks very interesting. Your blurb is good too. You know, that's going to give people an idea if they want to embark on this. Those are important little bits. So those are some of the big things. Ads, shout outs, and then to a lesser extent, blurb cover and review swaps. Those are the things that are going to bring readers to you. And of course, you can pitch your story, advertise it on Reddit. You can advertise it in the forums on Royalroad. That's fine. Always link your story in the signature of your Royalroad forum. It's free advertising. You can throw it up on Facebook and, grab your family and friends. Just be like, hey, could you jump on here and just say my story is the best thing since sliced bread? It's okay. After that, it's kind of a roll of the dice. You got to see who likes what. Engage with your readers. Talk to them in the comments. Be nice. Don't lament the people that have negative opinions. I'll tell you something. If you ever see somebody that says mean stuff to your story in the comments or in bad reviews, go look at their profile, see if they've ever written anything. Because no, they haven't. And if you end up with a lot, you just happen to end up with a lot of readers, you end up on that rising stars. Oh, congratulations. It's the exciting time. Don't wait to be discovered. Reach out to a publisher. Reach out to one. Tell them that you're succeeding. Tell them your views, your followers, your success, and they might take a shine to you.
Is this a good place for you to talk about how your publisher took a shine to you?
Sure. I'd love to. I reached out to a number of publishers, and I had the pleasure of being the subject of a small bidding war between two of them. They kind of looked at me over. They said, all right, you've got a good number of views, you got a good number of followers, and they kind of pitched offers back and forth, changes in advances, in percentages of royalties. I think it came down to, I ended up going with Podium. Podium both wanted a 3-book series. Podium, though, was willing to pay a bit more in the advance for each and get the book on more platforms than the other publisher. The book, for those of you that are interested, is called The Necromancer's End. It is a fantasy story, traditional fantasy, highly influenced by my experiences playing and running games of D&D. It's very much a tight-knit group of people having an adventure. The protagonist is on the realistic side. He is not going to be your overpowered, does everything right sort of hero. He's a guy that kind of struggles with struggling. I know that's not for everybody, but I feel like it's something that we can all identify with in one way or another.
That sounds awesome. And when can we expect that first book from you?
The first book is due out in June. It will be available through Podium as an ebook, a physical book, and an audiobook on Audible. The next 2 books hopefully will be coming out within 4 to 6 months from each other. The short story that you're going to be listening to in a few minutes is by Henry Kramer, and he is an incredible reader. If you listen to Lit RPG at all, you have undoubtedly listened to him, and I am nothing short of honored to have my work read by him.
Jank will come out in the next episode. It will be released on the same day as this episode. Henry Kramer will be reading Jank by Jack Pembroke. Tell us all about your socials and your website. Where can we find you?
I would love to, and I don't actually have any right now. I am not particularly tech savvy. I've got on Book Talk, and that was one of those moments where I was like, I'm not actually sure I have much to say here. Like, I'm focusing on writing. You can find me on Royalroad, honestly, and you can shoot me a message if you want. It's totally fine. I'm floating around a few Discords. You can find Jack Pembroke on there as well.
Well, Jack, thank you so much for coming to talk to us tonight, and best of luck to you and your writing.
Jared, thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Feel free to reach out anytime if you want to chat. That's for you and anybody else.
Thank you for joining us down this Lit RPG deep dive. Please consider giving us a review on Apple Podcasts and visit us over at longwinded.one, where you can see past episodes and find all of our socials, even our new Discord server. We hope you enjoy.